All right. You know, there's a song by Marvin Gaye called Flying High. One of the best lyrics from it is, I go to a place where danger awaits me. As I declared to start off this NFL show that the New York Giants were going to make the Dallas Cowboys bleed, they were going to put them on their rear ends. They were going to make them suffer. Well, as I said, as the show kicks off, the complete opposite happened. And I'm here to soak in any bullets that fellow Cowboys in this room have, comments I've seen online. And as we discuss the entire NFL as per usual, I just want to say that Monday night sucked for me and any other Giants fans. And before I give any analysis, I have to fairly open the floor to Mr. Bryan McKeon, who's here. Welcome, Bryan. And we also have Mr. Alex Ranelli, the Raiders fan, who's had some tough luck as well. What's up, gentlemen?
How we doing?
Good to see you guys. Let's get it on.
Well, yes. So as I give that little cold open, we start with the Giants and Cowboys on Monday night. Dallas wins 23-16. And here we go. I still have to say before I get my analysis, but here you go, Bryan. What's going on? What do you have to say about your Dallas Cowboys yesterday?
I'm not going to talk trash or anything like that because I'm not that Cowboy fan. I'm pretty level-headed. I'm going to start off with the Giants. I think the Giants are a legit NFL team for the first time in a while. I think they have a decent to good defense. I think that Daniel Jones is actually, as I was watching the game, even though he got crushed because of how bad your offensive line is, that's my next take. But I'm actually, he played well. He did well for the circumstances that he was put in. So you know what? Kudos to him for toughing it out. Tough loss for them because I really think that they could have won this game. I think it comes down to just the offensive line inefficiencies of, you guys having you were extending drives, but your offensive line would let up a sack. Kudos to DeMarcus Lawrence having a flashback moment of his career, having 3 sacks in the game. Haven't done that in a very long time. But if you guys start working on your offensive line, you got drafted those 2 tackles and they continue to grow, I think you'll do well. When it comes to Dallas, they did exactly what they needed to do, and run the ball, which they did. They ran 30 times, and I'm happy they did because that's the key to their success. Pollard and Elliott really very good complements of each other. CeeDee Lamb played well, even though he dropped a open touchdown, which is another reason why we should keep Amari Cooper, because Coop don't drop stuff, as we see in the Browns game. Noah Brown's playing lights out, and Cooper Rush is 3-0 as a starter, and is continuing to prove that he's a good backup. So you know what? I'm happy with the win, and I'm just going to go to the next week and not even gloat or anything like that, because I'll take a win as it goes right now with a backup quarterback.
Well, that's very nice of you, Bryan, because I won't lie, I would have done the opposite of that if it was the opposite. But we'll leave that to another day, and I respect and absolutely respect your professionalism in this.
Anytime.
But, yes, 23 hurries against Daniel Jones. Pollard and Zeke pounded the pass rush. DJ gave it everything, but some real weaknesses did uphold. And I guess even though it's week 3, we still have a game against Chicago that should be winnable. But yes. I think the ultimate thing to get out of this matchup is how well the team is coached. I think of a lot of other coaches or personnels were in there, it would have been a blowout. I mean, if we had the Jets coach in this team, it would have been a 40-point game. But yes, hell of a fight. But all I could ask is for competitive football at this point. And if this team is anything worthwhile, at least get yourself in the wild card discussion throughout this season. But ultimately, I think long term that you won't see it these players mostly on the field next season. I think this shows that Daniel Jones, even though he's definitely improved, I don't think he's the guy long term for the Giants.
No.
I think Brian Daboll and Joe Shane want to have their own regime, not this mostly Gettleman.
Yeah.
Mostly Gettleman selected team. And though it was fun while it lasted, the numbers don't lie. DJ's 0-9 in prime time. And despite some promise with Saquon as well, I think this was just a cold, hard reality. The Giants may have been the worst 2-0 team to start the season. And sure, there could be those other two games against Tennessee and Carolina could have gone the other way as well. It could be an 0-3 team, but despite the fight, this Giants team really isn't that good on paper with its players. But as long as Daboll keeps them afloat, even if they're all gone, most of them are gone next year, these games to keep it close makes it as fun as it can be.
Yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to, Matt. I think if you're Brian Daboll and that offensive crew, you have to kind of scheme for what you've been given in terms of the hand of cards you've been dealt, because of that stuff last night, while it was competitive football, it really just came down to where the rubber met the road. I mean, 3 for 11 on third down was really the most telling stat for me. And like Brian alluded to earlier, giving up 5 sacks is no winning recipe for a quarterback, no matter how good. So I think a lot of it just has to do with limitations with the roster. So like you said, kind of build a culture you want to, and then let those guys draft the guys they want to moving forward and make cuts on the 53-man roster. Yeah,
I mean, look, the Giants, the highest paid offensive player, Kenny Golladay, is barely getting anything. If that shows what the future comes, that they want to do it their way, after the last 6 years of crap, how can you deny them from that? So, all in all, did it go our way? I'm here to eat crow and staying corrected, but
a lot of winnable games on the schedule.
Yeah, I'll make one comment. I think you're being a very sore Giant fan right now with reality. I think you do have a decent team, though. You do have a good, decent team. Your defense is young, plays well. You held Dallas to 23 points when easily they could have scored 3 touchdowns in the first half alone that were field goals, that were just penalties and mismanagement and a drop catch. So you did do, you had some luck and you did play well. And I think Daniel Jones is actually a decent quarterback. It comes down to you can't judge. There's certain players. I could judge Justin Fields as a bad quarterback, even though he's on that Bears team with that bad offensive line. You could just tell. But when you look at Daniel Jones and you see him actually, the 2 weeks beforehand not get hit, he plays well. So I think you guys do have a shot. I think it just comes down to he's the quarterback that you need to surround with a bunch of pieces. So if you want to go that route, you just need to get him the help he needs. I'll make this last note about the Giants. Gabe Davis is going to have to get paid eventually from Buffalo. And who was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo? That might be your next number 1 receiver. I thought about that this weekend.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, sure, there are some players you could be happy with, your Jay Crowder and Adoree Jacksons, but sometimes the secondary might be lost. There was a lot of times with CeeDee Lamb, even there were so many chances and opportunities he got that was a tough pill to swallow. Aziz and Kevon in their season debuts, and Kevon Thibodeau's did his NFL debut really were non-existent in pressuring. But I do see your point. I agree with you, Brian, that they definitely have potential, but these weaker teams you have to take advantage of for experience. But then when you play tougher opponents like Baltimore and Green Bay in the upcoming season, then we could see what they really have. But for now, this is a 2-1 team. People didn't expect it. If you could just win against Chicago on Sunday,
and
then you're a 3-1 team going into it, you have a good chance to be in the wild card discussion throughout the rest of the season. And
absolutely,
that's all I could hope for from here on out. So next up, we have the Bucks and and we have the Bucks and Green Bay. Now, it's been a topsy-turvy ways to say it. What's up, Alex? I know you and I had a little disagreement over the weekend with how Aaron Rodgers specifically was looking. And, one thing I'll admit, I came at Alex about how good Aaron Rodgers looked after looking bleak in week 1, which we all could agree with. And then if the game just ended on the first half, they'd have some momentum. Ultimately, Green Bay wins the game by the skin of their teeth. I think one thing that shows that I think Tom Brady, without missing all his weapons, no Evans, no Godwin, or Julio Jones, and yet with players like Russell Gage and Scotty Miller, he was able to at least give them a fighting chance. So it was a low-scoring game as predicted, but ultimately, anything I could get out of it is I do think that Aaron Rodgers still has some great momentum, and even with his lack of weapons, is still trying to find that chemistry. This team, we're focusing on Green Bay, has some potential still throughout. And I understand the ultimate criticism is his shortcomings in the playoffs, but I guess we would really have to evaluate it in a few months from now, how that's going. But for now, I think you could be satisfied that at least Aaron Rodgers can maybe get some special momentum that is so monumental that he could just coast through the playoffs throughout. That's why for Green Bay. And then again, my comments with Tampa Bay. Defense looks pretty solid on top of Tom Brady. Even with his old age, he's keeping his team in it. Isn't that exciting? What do you guys think about with either with Tampa or Green Bay, Rodgers or Brady?
Well, it's funny because like Matt alluded to, I just closed my phone and I just let the second half play out, and I feel like I got the last laugh. But no, I mean, it was in all intents and purposes, it was a good game. It was a classic like football lovers game where a lot of it was just momentum changing and a lot of defense back and forth. I think that Green Bay is they're not what they used to be. And I mean that sincerely, from Aaron Rodgers' perspective, because they don't have a number one option, but they've showed us already in 3 weeks what they can do in terms of winning multiple ways. I think that's really the most important takeaway from this week 3 victory against Tampa. They're able to lean on that defense and allow this roster, this team to carry Aaron across the finish line. So I think that was probably the biggest takeaway. It was kind of an ugly game, but it was an exciting game. Rodgers had 7 different targets, and in the second half, he had the interception, but he was blanked in the second half. But I think that the way that they won really showed me a lot about this team's resiliency. So I think 2 things can be true at once. I think that Aaron can definitely take a step back, which I firmly do believe that he has. And it really just boils down to what we expect from this team, because I don't expect them to be an NFC championship contending team. I expect them to be probably a wild card and a first round exit. So with all that said, I thought it was a great game, but we just kind of have to more pointedly create an accurate conversation around what we expect from Aaron. That's all.
I hear that. It's fair. And I guess my only response with that is just keeping the court open with him. I do think throughout you will get a quarterback who could potentially be a 3-time back-to-back MVP winner. And if only he could go up against some more challenging defenses like that Giant defense, if we want to praise them, if anything, or when they play some other good teams coming up, I think the court will still be out with Rodgers, and let's ultimately see what happens.
For sure.
Bryan, you have anything else with this game to add?
I think this is a very good growing year for Green Bay. I think that this is the year for them to win the championship, but they're going to learn, like Alex said, how to win in multiple ways, leaning on the run game, leaning on the intermediate short route game of just being a game management kind of style, leaning on that defense. And when they do either draft or in free agency, get that number one receiver or two new receivers, get a tight end. I think that a premier tight end, I think that they will be able to be complete. I think that was always the issue with the Packers, is that they could only win one way. Yeah. And that was through the air raid. And now that we have the run game and the game management in, I think they'll do fine. And then in regards to Tampa, I really can't judge them until they're completely healthy, and just see some consistency in the lineup.
And I think ultimately, too, I think this team really succeeds if they lean on defense to really bring them home, but also to be a run-first offense, which is ironic because they only combined for 67 rushing yards on the ground Sunday. So it's kind of ironic. I feel like it was just one of those back and forth low-scoring games, but it definitely told me a lot about how they can win multiple ways.
Absolutely.
The New York Jets. It's funny. I think when you're down 7-0, the game's already over for the Jets. Oh man, a absolutely horrendous loss to Cincinnati. Give Cincinnati the boost they need, and maybe after having a win under their belt, they can resume to the prominence that people think they can. Of course, you don't want Joe Burrow to have problems being protected, but he didn't seem to be against the Jets. But I also don't think a high school team could have any pressure, especially in that defense. Robert Saleh's on the hot seat. Joe Flacco seems like his best days are behind him. And, it was scary for a second. Their only hope, maybe some of their weapons are really excited, especially Garrett Wilson. Looks like he can be a prominent receiver when he was picked over 5th overall in the draft. And it's really bad. Zach Wilson seems to be the only hope. As we're recording this, they haven't announced if he's going to be playing against Pittsburgh this week, but it's likely going to be the case. But I still don't think this Zach Wilson is the answer for the Jets. I don't see this guy making a difference at all, with the exception of maybe having a little more mobility than having Joe Flacco at the realm. But seriously, this is a mess. So many people were open. I think even a sloth could have made a catch in the end zone against the Jets. It's really, really bad. That's all I have to say. And I don't think I think the big question with this matchup is if Zach Wilson is going to make a difference. I don't see that. I didn't think he was a good second overall pick. Too many throws straight to the ground, making bad decisions, overthrowing players. I don't think he's anything special. And if I still see him in this league a few years from now, let's say will he still be playing in 2026, 27? I don't think so. I think it's just inevitable. And this is just another failed Jets team, GM and head coach combination, and Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. That didn't work, and they'll just have to find another group if there's even any hope. The Jets suck motherfucking ass.
Yeah, I feel that absolutely. I think this game, though, still worries me with the Bengals because they are not a good football team defensively this year, and that's shocking. Sucks as a fellow Staten Islander. The defensive coordinator is actually from Staten Island. But your defense ass right now. Even though it was 12 points the Jets scored. I was looking at the game, and the defense of the Bengals just looks confused a lot in my eyes. I don't know if if the scheme got harder this year, or just the personnel just isn't clicking well, but they just look a little confused a lot. And so that's my worry. The offensive line, did okay for the Bengals. They let only 2 sacks and 14 pressures on Burrow. Still sucks that he gets hit, but it is what it is. When it comes down to the Jets, though, I really hope they start Wilson. And I want to see from them a mid 2010s Patriots style offense in run, play action. That's what they need to do. They have the running backs to run the ball and they're efficient enough where they could actually, by committee, I think, trump the offensive line difficulties, because it's, the run game is, even if with a bad offensive line, you can run the football because offensive linemen can fall forward and you can get a few yards from that. It is possible. Passing game, that's where they need to do the play action. They have a in my opinion, they have a top 10 receiving core in the league, the Jets. If you really look at them, you got Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and on top 10 in talent. You look at these guys, they have the talent, get them in play action, they'll be open, and let's see what Zach Wilson can do. You got how many, 14 games left. Let's see what happens.
Can Zach Wilson make them officially a top 10 receiving core?
I think he can at least give them the looks that Joe Flacco can't, because Joe Flacco can give them the looks if given the proper offensive line. Unfortunately, they don't have the proper offensive line, so they need the mobility of someone like Zach Wilson, if he could stay healthy while he's mobile, to extend those plays and get them open.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to Cincinnati, because I was definitely more encouraged than what you guys alluded to with Cincinnati. I think they kind of started to allude back to 2021 playoff form. I think I saw a lot of things I really liked on the offensive side of the ball. Like you said, Bryan, I think the defense has a lot left to be desired. They looked a little confused, although I want to shout out Hendrickson for 2.5 sacks. He had a monster game on the front.
Yeah, great game by him.
Yeah. Outside of that, though, I mean, they got a lot of problems in the secondary. You shouldn't be giving up that kind of ease on defense to a backup quarterback like Flacco, whose best years are behind him. I definitely like what I saw. I saw a lot of their former Super Bowl run in that offense. I like the fact that he started, spreading it around, not relying on Jamar Chase as much because he was getting blanketed all day. T. Higgins really got into it, almost had 100 yards. Tyler Boyd was over 100 with a touchdown. So I do think that this team can get back to form as the season progresses. And I think this was the first game that kind of salvaged their season so far.
Speaking of salvage, the Las Vegas Raiders, Alex.
No, we can skip this topic. Sorry.
The team is 0-3. It's the only 0-3 team in the National Football League right now, dude. They lose to a team that Bryan declared one of the worst in Tennessee. And I just have to lead with that. The only 3 teams right now. What's going on? Do you need somebody to talk to? And beyond that, I know this is still plenty of season left.
Yeah.
And there's been few instances of teams starting 0-3 to still make the playoffs. But you are in a tough division. And let's be real. Any of those 3 games were winnable. Maybe you could argue against the one against the Chargers could have been 50-50, but at least the other 2 you could have won in Arizona and Tennessee this week. But dude, how are you feeling right now after the tough start?
Well, I feel surprisingly, shockingly, actually pretty good. Not because it's the 0-3, not particularly because it's 0-3, but like you said, how we lost. Those were all easily winnable games that could have been closed for that team. It was just a lot of miscues on the defense in the Arizona game. Playing from behind that definitely doesn't help in the Tennessee game, and that was my biggest concern both last season and this year. But what really, really concerns me less than the win-loss column is just the play call. I mean, if you're McDaniels, how do you go to Devonte Adams 6 times to get 6 touches in 2 games when you went after him for 17 touches in the first game of the season? And the only reason I would argue that they lost that game against the Chargers is because Carr threw 3 picks, and 2 of them were totally unforced errors. So I still think that there's a ton of season to play. I have questions about the Chargers because they got smacked at home by Jacksonville, which we'll talk about later. And Herbert's got concerns with the cracked ribs. Kansas City showed some vulnerability with that game against Indianapolis, and Broncos really have a hard time with this offense. So I feel much more comfortable saying that this season's far from over, and I think there's a case to be made that that 0-3 could either be 3-0, 1-2, or 2-1. I think it's too early to make any any difference between any of those records, and I think that people get a little lost in the record column, and that's fair. But what really concerned me more was where the money's made in this league is on third down, and Vegas was 1 for 12 on third down, which is just it's an utter embarrassment. It's completely unacceptable, and it has to be corrected if McDaniels is gonna survive the season.
Ooh, McDaniels hot seat talks already.
You can't keep playing from behind with all that talent. You can't be 1 for 12 third down when you have Devonte, Waller, and Renfro and Jacobs. Unacceptable.
Yeah, honestly, right now I do feel that now all you get is 1 year, and if you really don't meet your expectations, with so much money invested in these teams now, with fans' patience either non-existent really, especially in this "what have you done for me lately" world. I did actually see some people comment about his validity and if McDaniels ultimately can be a head coach in this league. And maybe there was a reason why he stayed so long as an assistant in New England, why he didn't take that Indianapolis job. Maybe he knows deep down he's not a head coach. But again, it's only week 3 to say that. I feel after week 6, that's week 6, week 7, that's a fair time to see who's good and who's bad.
Yeah, we'll know by
absolutely.
Then. And we'll see if Vegas is ultimately the case. But yeah, still a lot of football left. Remind me, who do they play this upcoming week?
Oh boy, I gotta check.
Cool. While we check that, Bryan, are you amazed or sad like Alex about the Raiders? And
I just feel
also
bad.
anything to take with Tennessee.
Oh, we're playing
I feel. Who?
We're playing the Broncos at home, but that's a winnable game.
Definitely a winnable game. I think you guys should win that game. Broncos are just literally like I think they're one of the worst teams in the league. They just have a pretty face. Raiders, it's the defense is god awful, and I'm sorry to say it. I really like Derek Carr, but like Derek Carr, stop looking like Kirk Cousins. It's time to play don't look like your brother. Like it's time to actually be a grown man. And you talked all this game. Guess what? You've been in the league long enough. If you don't like the play calling, Audible. If 1 and 12 at third down, guess what? You know how to read a defense by then. Call out of that fucking shit. It's time now. Be a grown man. I don't care about excuses anymore with this amount of talent on offense. I don't care if your defense is god awful. I've seen god awful defenses go to the Super Bowl with amazing offensive talent. It's happened. It's not that hard. Guess what? Play well. Play solid football. Make the correct reads. Throw the ball effectively. It's that simple. Don't extend plays if you can't extend them. Throw the check down. It's that simple. Josh Jacobs should be getting 5 catches every game. The fact that he isn't in the passing game enough is a sin. He had 5 catches this game for 31. It's very good. It's very good. You know what I mean? It sucks now. I'm aggravated because it's like I see them as a team that could really make a mark on this league, and it just continues to be the inefficiencies of their quarterback because I don't know what it is. He has like the yips in baseball. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think you made a great point, Bryan, because he used to take the matters into his own hands playing under Gruden before he got canned because he understood that he had to play his ass off, and try to take over this offense, especially with the injuries and Henry Ruggs, with his situation. So he definitely has a history of calling audible on the line and changing the play. And it's completely unexcusable at a certain point when you have all that talent that you don't convert more than two third downs. It's completely unacceptable.
Absolutely. And I think I'm going to bring up this. They did bad under Gruden. They're going to do bad under McDaniels because they're not disciplined kind of coaches that get in your face. I'm sorry. You should have signed Doug Peterson for this reason. And this alone, he's an offensive version of Jack Del Rio. Jack Del Rio was your best chance at a coach because he would smack you in the mouth and tell you to shut up and just play football. That's what they need. Wouldn't be shocked when Ron Rivera if the season goes bad for the Commanders, gets fired. And if McDaniels gets fired, they pick up Ron Rivera because they need a coach like that. They need a football right in your face, smash mouth kind of guy. They're the Raiders. That's what their brand is, and they don't have that brand. They have a mouse at head coach right now who's a little quiet behind his game plan, like this, whispering into the mic. It's pathetic. And with Tennessee, very simple. They only go as far as how good Ryan Tannehill is, in my opinion. It's no longer a Derrick Henry thing. The NFL has figured out how to stop him. They're going to go as far as the quarterback.
Yeah.
The Miami Dolphins beat the Buffalo Bills 19-21. Obviously, the infamous butt punt takes place to cause a safety, but Miami winds up staying alive, and it's just a funny blooper ultimately. Now, Buffalo dominated throughout. I mean, especially offensively. You had Josh Allen do have a 400 total yards, 400 yards, everybody. 400 passing yards and 47 rushing yards. And yet, Miami just scored when they needed to. It shows how good their defense really is. I guess the other thing that has to be mentioned is that Buffalo, especially on the secondary, is missing a lot of players, but yet Tua, in his back injury, not his head injury, was able to keep the team afloat, and that's another win. Mike McDaniel starting 3-0 in his coaching career, beating Belichick, beating Harbaugh, now beating Sean McDermott. How about this, guys? Buffalo, the dreams of a perfect season's done, but I think there's nothing to worry about, clearly.
Yeah, so, I don't think there's anything to worry except the injuries on the defense. You got to remember, they've played 3 games and they don't even have Tre'Davious White back from injury at their best corner. So, the top 5 corner in the league. So, we'll see what happens with them. I think, they're going to be in this for the long haul and win the division. So, I think it's just, some growing pains. It happens. You know what I mean? But I also think Miami's one of the better teams in the league. I think they're the most versatile. So, I called Buffalo the best overall team in the league. I'll call Miami the most versatile in the league in regards to skill sets, just because of how many different ways they can score. Buffalo's a little limited in the run game at times. In my eyes, the Dolphins' running attack with Edmonds and Mostert, even though they don't get a lot of yards, their efficiency as dual backs, as dual threats, are really good. And they force, the need for another guy in the box, or to take out a linebacker and put in another cornerback to cover them when they go out into the slot. So I appreciate that. And with regards to Tua, I think it's a crime that he didn't get put out for the rest of this game, because that man was definitely concussed. If anyone's ever played football before, that was not a back injury, because if it was, he wouldn't have been able to stand. So let's call it the way it is.
But does that make Mike McDaniel a liar then? Because he said it was a back injury in the medical staff.
I think it's a big, vague thing with health and football. I don't really believe anything that anyone says about injuries, because at the end of the day, a player could be lying and saying he's fine and he's not. Like, let's call it the way it is. Jameis Winston shouldn't be playing right now because he's losing games because he can't literally stand up straight. Like, obviously, there's a lot of things and issues regards to who listens to who in the NFL with injuries. So I hope that changes, because, Tua easily, if he got hit again in the head, could have been done from multiple games. And I didn't see the risk against a team that you should lose to in regards to Buffalo to keep him in there. So that's my comment on this game. Best receiving duo in the league with Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Tua's health will definitely be a concern moving forward. And I think you're right, Brian. I think there's a lot of covert ops going on with the league and these franchises, how they want to preserve their guys and not let the other teams' upcoming scheme and game plan for who's healthy and who's not. So I think a lot of that is PR, and I hope that Tua sincerely is ready for the rest of the season. But it's crazy, guys, because I got to this game late in the day and I'm looking at the stats and it's like literally Buffalo has them doubled on paper in every positive statistical category.
Yeah.
Total yards, 495 to 212. Passing yards, 380 to 171. Rushing yards, they almost tripled them. Doubled them in first downs, doubled them in for third down efficiency. Time of possession, they doubled them up. Like, it's insane. And when you look at this team, it's like, yeah, they have holes in the secondary, but it was almost virtually inexcusable to lose this game considering the amount of touches Miami got. So I think the outcome of this game, we can parse it down to the receiver not getting out of bounds and not being able to get a second playoff before the field goal. But I don't think that Buffalo should have even been in that circumstance in the first place. And I wonder how this head-to-head matchup will play going down to the end of the season in parsing out the rank order of the division winners, because I got to admit to you guys, I underestimated Miami, and if they can hang in here for the rest of the season with Buffalo, because Buffalo's got a couple tough games on their schedule, who knows? This may come back to bite them. So we'll see.
Got to win those divisional games. And yeah, I mean, when you have so much yardage like the Buffalo team did, you wonder what wrong, but they just, it was just a matter of getting into the red zone for field goals. Wasn't enough. Despite that, their offense was healthy, and Miami could say they only allowed that offense to give up 19 points. It's just a weird football. It's just football's weird sometimes like that. So
4 fumbles by Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Total topsy-turvy, if you will.
Yeah, it's a fluke game. It happens.
For sure. So the Eagles, now they're making their case as a top team in the NFC. Jalen Hurts with 3 touchdowns again, staying afloat in the ground game, still passing it well. And Devonte Smith finally has a big breakout game that they were hoping for with him. Miles Sanders looks like he's a solid back in this league. And then the Commanders look just absolutely lifeless at home, especially Carson Wentz. Eagles. How about them Eagles? I'm pissed. I hate the Eagles, but can't deny that they are pretty stellar at this moment.
It's the best team in football without a doubt. Jalen Hurts is playing like an MVP candidate. They got three, I would say, starting caliber running backs on their team, with Sanders, if you count Jalen Hurts as a running back at times, and Kenneth Gainwell. They had 30 carries for 72 yards. But it's more of, it just depends on the offensive scheme and what the defense gives them any game. They could go off for 150. And, Devonte Smith exploded onto the scene at receiving at 8 receptions, 169, a touchdown. And their defense is stellar. They destroyed Washington, who was putting up good points the first 2 games. So, kudos to the Eagles defense. And Washington, they're going to be a middle of the pack team the year, between, I think, 6 and 8 wins. So, Terry McLaurin had a good game and Curtis Samuel, but besides that, they didn't look really good. So, on to the next.
Right. Absolutely, dude. And the Commanders, and I mean, looked really bad. They almost got shut out at one point, but
a lot of teams would look bad. A lot of teams will look bad against this Eagles team. Like, I expect the Giants and Cowboys to get 30-pieced by this Eagles team. It's just like, especially in Dallas, is a great defense. I expect them to get put 30 on them. It's just, this team is high octane offense and stellar defense.
It shows what Nick Sirianni has cooking for him. Very well coached team.
The only thing I want to emphasize what Bryan said is I thought that it was exceptional how clean game Philadelphia played. They didn't have a single fumble, no picks. They only had 3 sacks allowed, which, is something but of concern, regarding the health of Hurts and preserving that O-line. But, you have to consider who Washington has lined on the front 4 too. I think, Devonte Smith was due for a giant game. He was unstoppable all day, and at the end, at the end of the day, I think this is the better 3-0 team of them in Miami, and I think that they look as good as we predicted. So
I'll say one thing. The Eagles had 9 sacks in a game. 9 sacks. Like, I'm looking up right now how many sacks is most single game in a season, most single game for a team, because 9 sacks is ridiculous.
That is crazy.
Some Madden numbers right there.
Eagles in 1952 had 14, okay? And they had 9 against, an okay offensive line. Like, this team is legit.
Yeah. It just shows you that they're so dominant on all 3 phases of the ball.
And talking about dominance on his walk year, Lamar Jackson is absolutely killing it. Killing it in the ground, killing it in the passing game. Ravens rout the Patriots. Patriots look really bad. Jones sprains his ankle, so he's probably out for multiple weeks. Brian Hoyer's coming in, and the Patriots and Bill Belichick need to figure out how they can stay relevant in their division, especially with the rise of the Bills and Dolphins. But it seems that, it's their time to finally be in the backseat after dominating for almost 2 decades in the AFC East, winning 6 Super Bowls since 2000. Yeah, guys, I mean, I don't know what's more interesting is how good the Ravens are after a heartbreaking loss. Again, I don't know how good the Ravens are after a heartbreaking loss to Miami, or is this game more about how the Patriots might not be a good team once and for all? And especially when you play Brian Hoyer, who's been there forever. I mean, what hope do you have? Jacoby Myers is hurt. Damian Harris is okay. I think the Patriots are in some real trouble. You guys agree or disagree?
They're one of the worst teams in football. One of the worst teams in football, and I can't believe I would ever say that. They're just an old defense. They got rid of all their offensive linemen in trades in the last 4 years, starting with Nate Solder when he went to the Giants, and it continued with Shaq Mason this offseason. Devontae Parker had a turn back the clock game with 5 catches for 156 yards. Good for him. But like Mac Jones is cheeks. Let's call it the way it is. He's ass. And the rushing game is the only thing that's exciting with this team. They're a terrible football team. I honestly think the Jets will beat them twice. Not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. The Jets might beat them twice, especially if I didn't look at the schedule, but if they play without, Jones might have surgery and might be out the entire season, they said, because of how bad his sprained ankle is. I never heard of that. But if that's the case, terrible tank for Bryce Young. And with Baltimore, Lamar is the MVP right now. Absolutely. The man's going to have 1,000 yards rushing, and he might even have 4,000 yards passing this year. Not even kidding. Dobbins looks rusty as he's supposed to be. I can see life with him, though. And Mark Andrews is the best overall tight end in the league. Absolutely. If you count passing, blocking, and strength, he's better than Kelsey. He's better than Kittle. He's better than Hawkinson, Pitts. He's the best player I've ever seen at the tight end position since Tony Gonzalez and Gronk.
Or Megatron, too.
Yeah, Megatron's a receiver. I don't count him.
Oh, come on. No, there's nothing to disagree with there, Brian. The stat line is ridiculous for Lamar. I think he's on pace for another MVP run as well. All things considered, knock on wood for health. Dobbins and Hill and Duvernay for that matter. I think they'll start getting their stride as the season progresses. I think that this offense is a little bit recalibrated, but they still look exceptional. And I agree that Mark Andrews really is, he is probably the best tight end in football. And the fact that if they can get their secondary back into form, they really will be, a team to be reckoned with further in the playoffs than I expected initially, because I had kind of had them at a bottom middle wild card team. But if they can get that secondary shirt up and, put Lamar at shorter fields, not going 90, 100 yards to the end zone, I think that they can make his life a lot easier. It was only close because it was a quick scoring game, but they really blew the doors off New England. And I think towards the end of the season, if they're looking at a 5-6 win team, you got to wonder what Belichick does with this roster and whether he steps away or not, because I think this has to be really a humbling moment to have the ego coming into the season to think that you have all the answers in your regime. You don't have to look outward to outsourcing some of this talent and some of this roster acquisition. I think it's really telling of where the game is, where the times of New England football is, and where they want to go, because similar to the Jet situation, you really can't compete in this division without a high-flying, high-powered offense. And Bill doesn't have that at his core. He doesn't have it in his coaching staff, and he certainly doesn't have it in his quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from the end of the season here.
What do you have when you have two failed coaches in Matt Patricia and Joe Judge leading your offense? Personally, I think Bill Belichick, he's going to be coaching until he's 10 years past his death. I see him maybe trying with one more regime, seeing with the draft if Mac Jones really isn't what they expect, that he can rebuild one more time and then call it quits. But he still seems to have that energy there.
But the thing too, you got to understand, Matt, is that he's actually co-opting as the general manager. So it's
of course.
How many decisions are coming to his desk that he's passing yes or no on? And to be honest, at 70 years old, it's kind of a similar situation with Pete Carroll. It's like how much time is really on the leash there.
Fair points for sure. I think that he is going to still experiment and still give a go for while he still can. He seems too stubborn to end on a low note. That's on a personality standpoint. You were saying, Bryan?
I'll make one take on this, as I was really thinking about this after watching this game. Were these defenses really that good in the Patriots dynasty, or was it that they really knew how to play hero ball with a lead from Tom Brady and co, and knew how to excel at picking up the mistakes of offensives that were behind on a lead? Because looking through time, you don't see perennial Pro Bowlers really in the Patriots defense. You've never, their big cornerbacks have, J.C. Jackson, Darrelle Revis, Sante Samuel, in years past were, drafted or left or quick free agent acquisitions. Were they really that good, or was it they knew how to play within the confines of having a lead? And that's what I'm noticing more and more as their offense has considerably decreased since Brady's gone. And even in his last years, the defense got worse. So I think it was more of an opportunistic scheme than it was actually the mental juggernaut and greatness of Bill Belichick on defense.
Some franchises do know how to win too, but if you look at, let's say, the Super Bowl specifically, obviously they should have lost against Atlanta. They let Russell Wilson go down the field in the final drive, only to literally hand them a Super Bowl win with a brain fart and the interception by Malcolm Butler. I mean, it is a fair argument you can make, with the exception of really dominating against the Rams when they played their last Super Bowl. But I think that's a fair debate to ponder. But ultimately, some franchises, again, just know how to win, know how to have calls go their way, especially in some AFC championship games the Patriot dynasty had. I think that really is something to really research and soak in. But I do see both sides, and you make a good point with it. So, and also I have one thing to say, one Patriots wise. Now reckon I'm mostly in New Jersey now. Spent also time where I grew up in Southwest Connecticut. Where'd all the Patriot fans go? I mean, seriously, over the past 2 decades, growing up when I started liking football, even when I grew up in both a New England, New York metro environment, there was Patriot fans all over. I went to school with so many Patriot fans from all different parts of the country, and now they are as silent as ever. What happens when you fight a little diversity? You just disappear. I mean, seriously, the Patriot fan is gone. What?
Quieter than a church mouse.
I knew this day was going to come, especially when Tom Brady left. What kind of allegiance did you have once Tom Brady left? It just showed people were more Tom Brady fans than New England Patriots. I mean, people really made the case. I mean, they are not a national team. They don't have the presence like Green Bay or Dallas across the country. They just love Tom Brady. And then when Tom Brady goes, who the hell's a Bucks fan except the people in Florida over there? I mean, come on. The Patriot fan is as fake and as
fair weather,
loserish, and as you said, fair weather as it gets with this franchise. And no wonder why they're missing with some obstacles ahead. What a joke. What a joke. And you know who's also a joke? The Cleveland Browns falling to the Steelers. Cleveland Browns, listen, the Steelers are lucky to play the Jets. Despite being well coached, they miss TJ Watt, and they somehow fall to the Cleveland Browns. So I'm sorry, I messed up what I was saying. It was a joke that they lost to the Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh. And again, despite being well coached, they really miss Micah Fitzpatrick now, especially. Obviously, as I said, no TJ Watt. And again, at this point, every week it's going to be, when are you going to put Kenny Pickett? I don't think they're going to put him this week against the Jets, just from the reports that I'm getting at from their beat and stuff. But I feel like it would make sense to play a very weak defense, put the kid in. But, could just be a result of one thing that I've really learned is how much you really want to play a player you're putting a lot of into their salary. They want to play players who are getting paid, with the exception of Brian Daboll, clearly. But I think the Steelers both have time on their hands, and they also can experiment a little. I mean, you're Mike Tomlin, you're going to the Hall of Fame, you've been coaching forever, but now that you might not see any promise with Mitch Trubisky, what else can you do to excite your fan base in what could be a down year for them?
I watched this game, and I don't think it's a joke that they lost, because I think the Cleveland Browns are going to make the playoffs this year without Deshaun Watson, just because of the sheer talent they have on offense. Jacoby Brissett is going to earn himself a starting job somewhere in the league for at least another year after this season, the way he's playing. Very efficient. I think he's 6th or 7th in the league in quarterback rating right now. The rushing game is amazing, and the receiving core is phenomenal. It's another reason why this game is another prove-it game from Amari Cooper to fuck Dallas, because they got rid of him for a 5th-round pick. Shame on Jerry Jones. I hope he never sleeps when he's 6 feet under. God damn it.
Goodness.
So frustrating. I have a number 2 receiver who dropped the ball against the Giants. Terrible. Besides that, Steelers, I really heard a rumor on ESPN. I looked deeper into it. They hate the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. And it makes sense. This offense is very lackluster, and I kept on thinking, is it the play calling or Trubisky? I think it really is like 65-35 play calling Trubisky. I think Trubisky's limited in skill, but I really don't like the play calling that they do. I don't think it fits the players they have around. I just don't see it. I don't see it. With this, I really like, in my eyes, this offense is not being run the way I think other OCs would do it. I think there needs to be a lot more play action involved and a lot more heavy emphasis on the run. And because they have the talented receivers to get open on play action. They got Claypool and Pickens and Johnson are fast. They should be doing, outside run plays and, some RPO. Like the Giants did RPO with Daniel Jones last night, like 5 times. I was like, holy shit, I'm watching high school football, but it works with Barkley and Jones. There's no reason why you can't do that with Najee Harris and Trubisky. Like Trubisky's actually a fast runner. Like he's pretty good. It's possible. So, I think play calling is going to be their downfall this year because to me, I don't think they're ever going to start the rookie because I think Tomlin's stubborn that he could win with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know that Tomlin's not the ultimate play caller because he's a defensive-minded coach, but you got to wonder how much responsibility is bearing on the offensive coordinator. Because I think that the past 2 years, what we saw from Big Ben, I thought that a lot of the conservative play calling and not being able to play from behind and all these checkdowns was just a byproduct of what Big Ben's limitations were, but it looks like it's more than that. And I think it may have to do more with the regime they have there on the offensive side of the ball. But, I mean, you guys really talked about it, at length, but Brissett is really a consummate professional. I know that he really impressed me the first half of the season when he was playing at Indianapolis, and I know that he'll be able to continue to get solid backup roles where he can thrive and be successful, and furthermore, have more starting gigs in the league because there's always room for guys who can play at a high level and be counted on in this league. I thought that the run game really took this game over. Chubb really dominated at five a carry for 113 for the night. And Kareem Hunt was right behind him at 50 yards. I thought this was really just a game. It was really a tip of the cap to Stefanski because it shows that what he has between his ears is really, really special. And I think that he can win with a lesser roster far more than I even expected going into the season. So I have to give him a lot of credit for the play calling, being able to stay calm under duress with all the issues going on in the offseason. The only thing I will ask is, because I know Matt is a huge OBJ fan, but the George Pickens catch, is that a catch of the year or what are we
That's
doing?
Better than the Odell catch.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
My support for Odell has dwindled throughout the years, but I think it definitely is up there. It's definitely the best catch in the first 3 weeks.
Oh yeah,
and we could appreciate that kind of athleticism, of course. Justin Fields goes 8 for 17, only throws 106 yards, throws a couple of picks, and it's all on their running game that the Bears somehow defeat Houston. And then David Mills almost making a push, but ultimately throws a pick himself, which leads to a game-winning field goal for the Bears. Man, Justin Fields not getting any love. Seems like another Ohio State quarterback not making it in the NFL. What do we think about this?
He's so bad. He just gets me mad. Like, I'm sorry that it rhymed, but fuck this guy, man. Get him off the field. I want them to trade back for Nick Foles and start him because it's just so frustrating. You have such talent at the receiving core with Kmet, Mooney, St. Brown, Pringle is a good deep threat, and you can't do anything. It's actually so frustrating. And this run game is amazing. This is this team could be very good in the skill position if they had a competent quarterback. Now, this is a team, like we just talked about Jacoby Brissett, that if Jacoby Brissett went to the Bears and they did a little O-line upgrade and they drafted a quarterback, they would be looking at 500 at that next year in that season. It's just such a shame to watch. This is just loss of talent. This is demoralizing. I feel bad for Darnell Mooney. It's just I would quit. I would retire and then try to go somewhere else in a year or two, or sell my own rights at that point and try to get out of the contract. This is terrible. And the Texans, they're the best 0-2-1 team I've seen in a while. They have moxie. They put up fight. The running back room is really solid. David Mills, average quarterback to bottom average. We'll see what happens with him. It's a shame that they lost. I really think they should have won this game. But yeah, Chicago's a dumpster fire right now. Well, the worst 2-1 team I've ever seen.
Well, before I put all the weight on Justin Fields, because he definitely has not impressed and has definitely not broken the stereotype of Ohio State quarterbacks to stink it up in the league. But I think a lot of this is very much fundamentally an infrastructure problem. I think that Chicago's never gotten the offensive talent right, whether it's skill position guys. They never know when to sign guys. They let them walk out the door. They don't make deals. They don't have a sustainable, ground game in the past. I think that's probably the only way moving forward to keep these games competitive, because as we saw the other day, Herbert just freaking ran at them off the field. He pretty much dominated the game and controlled the clock for them. But it just seems like they only have one way to win, and you got to wonder how long before they tear everything down and start over again. Because I'm not a big proponent of regime changes in such rapid time, but you know what you're seeing when you see it. And this team is a dysfunctional team. It's a dysfunctional organization, and they probably need to clean house sooner than later. I think they're very much a disappointing roster overall. But with Houston, I think there's a lot of upside. We knew that going into the season they were going to be playing with house money, seeing what Davis Mills can give you before cutting bait, and just kind of putting a little bit of faith back into Lovie Smith just to have some fun in the quarterback's room and see who to keep on that roster. But they put up a good fight. It was definitely more impressive than the Bears win, I think, honestly. And I think they could have won that game down the stretch of the game, considering the interception.
I'll make this one comment, and then I'm done with the Bears for at least until next week. They have Trevor Siemian on their roster right now. And if you remember Trevor Siemian on the Saints last year, after Winston got hurt, he played very well. He's a serviceable backup. He puts up decent stats. There is no reason, now after at least a season in 3 games when you have with Fields, there's no reason why not just putting him in, because you now need to see your talent at your receiving core at this point. Because, yeah, they're 2-1, but you're not going anywhere with this team. You need to see talent, and I need a competent quarterback who can at least throw the deep ball to actually evaluate it.
Let me ask you a quick, Brian, though, because if this team really starts to implode halfway through the season and they look like a tanking team, which we all think they kind of would be, as the GM theoretically in the Bears office, would you start rebuilding that offensive line first, or would you just tear it all down to the ground?
I think you could you're going to have the cap space with the offensive line, but just because you have no real big free agents really, and you're obviously going to let Roquan walk. I think what they should do first right now is trade Roquan Smith for a 2nd-round pick, or a few mid-rounders. You need to get as many as you can right now, because the defense is not good enough that if you take Roquan away, they're still bad. Unfortunately, that's just the name of the game. A middle linebacker isn't really a premier position to make or break. Middle linebacker will make a good defense a great defense. It will not make a bad defense a great defense. It's just the way that the game is. A true cornerback could, like a Pat Surtain or something like that. But yeah, I feel like the next offseason, just build the offensive line and draft a quarterback and find yourself a bridge quarterback. You need a bridge quarterback to take the hits and let the rookie learn.
Chiefs upset the Colts. Sorry, Chiefs get upset by the Colts. Who knows? Maybe the Colts aren't out of their rut. Even though Matt Ryan played only okay, it was the Chiefs, I think, the ones who really underachieved, especially Kelsey not being his dominant self for Patrick Mahomes. It was a tough one for them. Did anyone pick them as the upset and upset Whimpers and Fillers? I don't think so.
I did.
You did. So, Alex, you got it right. What made it all possible in your eyes?
Well, it's funny. I think the Colts kind of fell according to plan, for me at least. We all know how the first third of the season goes with, new regime change and new quarterbacks. It's going to always be a rocky start. But I actually had the Colts winning in week 3 against the Chiefs for the simple fact that I knew that the first 2 weeks were going to be a tough integration. And I knew that the Chiefs were going to have an over-evaluated sense of confidence going into this road game. I think what really, Matt Ryan didn't play a perfect game. He looked like his older form back in Atlanta before the MVP season. I thought that he really played a pretty solid game. I think what the two plays that really changed this game, because it was very volatile, it was very back and forth, a lot of change between these two teams in terms of the ball control. But I think obviously the kickoff giving The kickoff punt that was muffed was definitely a huge one because it gave Indianapolis 7 points right off the board. But I think in the second quarter, if you look at that fumble recovery as well, and the penalty against Kansas City that extended that final drive, that was what allowed Matt Ryan to close that game out. But I was very encouraged to see that they won that game to kind of save their season, so to speak. And I think that the best games and days are to come with this team because I still have confidence they can win the division. And I was very impressed to see that he could spread the ball around and win through the air because that was more of our concern with having a second and third option at receiver for this team.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Colts, they're going to be like iffy this year. I just feel like they're going to be like middle of the pack and make catch like at the end of the year. I think the big tell for the Chiefs is that Pat Mahomes had the most rushing yards with 26. You gotta they need the run game more than ever now, just because they don't have Tyreek Hill. They don't have this team needs to be able to extend drives instead of score quick. That's what they need to do now. The Chiefs, they got to change. They need the Alex Smith. They need the Alex Smith offense back to game manage. Even though Mahomes can play lights out, it's just you need to get good at that. Like Aaron Rodgers is getting good at that right now. So when they do get that number one receiver eventually again, they will be ready to be complete. It will just add another way for them to win. And that's what I want to see the Chiefs work on this season. My
concern with Andy Reid, running this team and being as risky as it is, it feels like absent of Tyreek and, like you said, more to the Alex Smith days. It feels like this team is more icing than cake. And I felt like with Alex Smith's team, it felt more cake than icing. It felt like there was more structure. It felt like they kind of really were evenly spread across three phases of the ball.
And what about some of the criticisms for Bieniemy and how he's ran the offense lately, and especially some of the play calling towards the end, more running the ball instead of letting Mahomes try to throw it down the field. She's had success. Do we think that is a factor at all? Or it was maybe just another fluke game like the Bills and Miami game was?
That's tough.
I just don't think they don't know their identity on offense right now.
Yeah, Juju is not Tyreek.
Yeah, they just don't know who they are yet. I still think there's questions. I think they really relied on McCole Hardman being a Tyreek Hill Jr. and he's proving not to be that. And now they have, I would say, Sammy Watkins type of players. No, they have a receiving core of number 2 receivers. They don't have the big number 1.
And Kelsey only went for 58 yards the other day too.
And a touchdown, and that's a good game for a tight end. I think that's what we have to realize. That's a good game for a tight end. So
but you need great ones from the Hall of Fame talent.
It can happen every game.
I had Kansas City around 500 through week 6, so I kind of fully prognosticated that they were going to have some issues with the new personnel on that offensive side of the ball. And to Bieniemy's credit to his defense, I would say that it's a lot more hard. It's a lot more difficult. Calling an offensive game plan when you have a guy who can extend so many plays like Mahomes, because he really plays on the edge sometimes, and he can be, scrambly and elusive. And I think that's the same problem that Russell Wilson ran into in Seattle as well.
I think their best offense is going to be if Jerick McKinnon and Edwards-Helaire are on the field at the same time. One or the other has to be at the slot. They have the best hands on the team besides Kelsey. And it's been proven, and they just need to keep on doing that.
They need to run some sweep actions or some kind of shifts on the line where they can get some action in the run game, because you can't have an offense this divided.
Absolutely.
The Vikings win despite a gopher game from Justin Jefferson again, but Cousin uses other weapons like Osborne and Thiessen. And a good running game. Dalvin Cook gets hurt, but he looks like day-to-day, and he should be playing again on Sunday. The Lions have a heart, still continuing some offensive dominance, but they still need to now learn how to close games. And they're easy to root for despite a tough loss for them. What did we get out of Minnesota versus Detroit?
Minnesota could win in different ways. They don't have to just play with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. The injury is, we'll see what happens with that. They have a very good backup, but I like this is a very good moral win for the Vikings. They could come back because they were down at some points, but also they could play, the other receivers could step up, and that's huge. That's a big not ego boost, a morale boost for those receivers that don't get the love that they might deserve just because of how much yardage and demand that Jefferson needs. So what, good for them. I'm happy for them. Adam Thielen, class act, always playing well. Good for him. Defense played decent. Detroit's a very good scoring offense, and I love Detroit. I keep on saying this. I think they're my second favorite team now. Jared Goff plays well and is going to continue to play well. Jamal Williams had a great game with Swift not getting the carries, and I think he got hurt at one point, if I don't remember. But the receiving core is top notch right now with Josh Reynolds, DJ Chark, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. This team has the capabilities of going to the playoff and being a wild card team. They just need to learn how to, finish off those games. But you know what? Kudos to Dan Campbell. He had a hell of a coaching game. We just got, it happens.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that this team is really starting to extrapolate their capabilities both on offense and defense for Minnesota. Hats off to Detroit, because I think they're a lot better than people give them credit for, especially like the average fan. For us, we kind of understand inside the numbers a little more, to so to speak. But I think there was a lot of positive things to take away with this Minnesota team, especially with Cook going down halfway through the game. Especially when you consider that they lost on time of possession, and they really didn't play an effective run game or passing game comparatively. Detroit they outpaced them in total yards, passing yards, and on the ground as well. So I think all those things considered, the fact that Kirk Cousins did play a clean game, they only had 15 penalty yards. He didn't throw a pick. I think those are really important things to keep moving forward with in terms of discipline and how they operate this offense.
The 49ers and Broncos was so boring. Once again, I see Denver winning a game, but doesn't get a lot of love for it, especially Russell Wilson. A lot of people, the big thing was, how did the punter get so much action despite the guy who's getting paid, $225 million? Jimmy G walks into getting a safety, and it was slow for San Francisco, especially if you lose by 1 point and you have a safety in the game. Well, pretty ugly stuff, but I still think San Francisco has some promise, but it was just an absolute mess for them.
I'm not even going to comment on this game, except that Denver doesn't know who the hell they are. Coach is incompetent, and San Francisco, they're just, they're going to it's going to take a few games to get Jimmy G rolling again in the offense, just because of the lack of preseason reps and camp reps. So fluke game, it happens, it is what it is, but Denver's in trouble.
Do you think they are up for worst 2-1 team as well?
Yeah, I'd put them up there.
Yeah, I'm definitely not encouraged by my preseason pick with Denver. I think I still have faith that this is going to fix itself over time, and just in terms of the offense, really clicking on multiple levels. I think that you're going to see a lot more conservative football in the center of the field, a lot more in the ground game, a lot more third and outs, not a lot of risky football, because they don't really trust their defense as much as I expected either. San Fran, I think it's more of a byproduct of not having enough offseason time with Jimmy G. I think that'll definitely fix itself as well. I would be concerned about Debo with the injury. I think that he really is the linchpin to that entire offense, and keeping him healthy and preserving him is going to be a huge question moving forward. But I'm definitely very concerned with the Broncos. I don't really like what I'm seeing at all, and especially because I had, maybe unrealistically high hopes for this team. I had them winning the division and possibly being a second or third seed in the AFC. And I think it's because I put a lot of stock in Russell Wilson being able to work with adaptable situations. And I knew that he had some, really, really nice pieces, to work with going into the season. I really love Cortland Sutton. I love Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. I think that these things can definitely work themselves out over the course of the season, but this game was a turd. It was a stinker.
It's 21 in QBR.
It's crazy.
236 million is worth.
Somebody, there's a team that looks like they're in a lot of trouble, especially now with the injuries that take place with the Los Angeles Chargers. Losing Joey Bosa is gonna kill him. And then that defense lets 38 points on the given up against them. Trevor Lawrence of Jacksonville destroys LA in front of their hometown fan base. And again, the injuries are looking like a big concern, but Trevor Lawrence, arguably his best game so far in the NFL. Looks like he was dominating like how he used to dominate ACC teams when he was at Clemson. It clearly shows that James Robinson is the number one when it comes to being a running back for their offense. Etney looks like he's a failed. Well, I mean, it's weird because he's very young and barely played, but looks like now that Robinson is the guy, and you still have Etney still gets a solid 45 yards on 13 carries, but regardless, they have a great run game, which is something that nobody expected coming, at least no one that I saw. And then, with the guys they have with Kirk and Jones on the receiving core, Jacksonville is making a lot of people happy right now. And again, maybe there's some concerns with the Chargers with their injury problems. And then Justin Herbert saying he just didn't want to quit on the team. Maybe it's time to take it easy before it's too late. And if he has to spend a few weeks on the injury report, then maybe he could go back and full throttle, especially with the struggles the AFC West is having right now. So a lot to take in with this game. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, Jacksonville's playing lights out. Good for them. They're ahead of schedule. I want to see more from them. I also think that the Chargers are now, after 3 games, are very overrated. The offense is good, but at the same time, they just don't have the click that they used to. Yet again, why does Austin Eckler only have 4 carries? This is the problem. This guy needs to get the carries. I don't care what he said in the offseason that he wants his role reduced. Guess what? We pay you, you play. That's called the job. If you don't like it, you can quit. It's that simple. They miss Keenan Allen, but I think it comes down to the fact that Justin Herbert needs an offensive-minded head coach because the offense looks very predictable and lackluster, and it's very unfortunate for him. I'm seeing Drew Brees Chargers right now.
Oh no!
Especially with the injuries now. Especially with the injuries.
Yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is definitely way ahead of schedule, and so is his team. I don't want to be hyperbolic and put him in a double-digit win column this year, but I think that they are showing a lot of progress in the right direction on both sides of the ball, and I really like what Doug Peterson's already done in 3 weeks' time, getting this team ready for the season. I think that in terms of the Chargers, I think they really have to switch things around on its head on offense and be more of a run-first team just in the short term while Herbert starts nursing that rib cage and that's that abdomen section. I think that he's the franchise guy, he's the money maker, and while Keenan Allen's out, I think it's time to pivot towards Eckler and see what this offense is made of, especially while the rest of the division is kind of in disarray right now. But I'm really impressed with Jacksonville. I know our friends across the pond are pretty hyped about it because when they come to town, they're actually going to be a team worth watching. Yeah, I think that we kind of bash Christian Kirk for the money that he made, but I definitely like what I saw from Zay Jones. I think he's more of the number one. Maybe moving forward, we'll see. I love what James Robinson represents in their ground game, and this team is going to be exciting, far more exciting than I really gave it credit for.
Well, Atlanta finally wins. Did Cordell Patterson have a 1-game wonder, or do you think he has more of these games in him? Seahawks are coasting. Not much to say for these two terrible teams to go at each other except for betting purposes. But hey, Atlanta finally gets a win. That's the one. That's all I can really say regarding this game.
Hey, Cordero Patterson's the most versatile player in the NFL right now. Man, that's 221 yard rushing yard games in 3 games. And I'm going to say this now. They're ahead of schedule big time right now. And Marcus Mariota might play his way to another season of starting, even if he's mediocre with the interception TD ratio. His mobility and his ability to command this offense is in leaps and bounds better than Matt Ryan did last year. And besides, the only acquisition they got from last year was Drake London, if you really think about it on the offense. No other major upgrade.
Yeah.
So he's playing the game. He's going to get himself another contract the way if this continues. And I think he's improving. He had a 99.8 quarterback rating. Good for him. Defense is still questionable. Seattle, same thing though. Geno Smith played well. He had a 99.2 quarterback rating. He's doing good. He hit 325 yards. It's pretty impressive for a guy that got hit in the face in a locker room. It's good. Run game I'd like to see more from. I'll bring that up every time he got hit in the face. Funniest story ever. And the receiving core, they're spreading the love around. Very good. 2 mediocre teams. It's fun to watch. It happens. You have some mediocre blunder games, but it was exciting. They both provide exciting competitive football.
And like Bryan, and Matt, there's not really much to say about it. A game like this, it's both 2 shitty teams. But I think the one thing that really
sorry, that's funny. I like your delivery on that, and you're not wrong either. Sorry, you were saying.
No, I just the only thing I wanted to add to this is because there's not much else to say is that I think this is kind of a defining point early on in the season where because of the tone set and the way these guys play for their team, this is kind of the telltale sign to an organization to keep and stick with a certain regime and a coach. And I think that Arthur Smith is the guy to move forward. It's always easy to actually put everything at the feet of a coach when teams are tanking, but he really feels like the real deal. And I think the way this team plays hard for him, I think is
just 2 more matchups to go over. We have the Rams coast against the Cardinals. Would have been nice if they shut down Marquise Brown, but that was really it. Kyler throws 58 times. Cam Akers finally has a good game on the ground. Matt Stafford looks good, except despite no touchdowns. And Cooper Kupp getting a rushing touchdown instead. I think Kyler really wants DeAndre Hopkins back if he could still be DeAndre Hopkins. But, just stacking up wins for Los Angeles. And, the Cardinals really they're turning into a team I'm starting out like covering because of this, how weird in the sense that, man, this team does have they somehow know how to make plays. I mean, they do have some good players in there on offense, but on defense, I mean, it's an old, boring team that almost just likes to if they could really make the most out of something again, especially that lucky win against under Alex's expense. But I just look at Arizona and I see uninspiring football right now.
And they're one-dimensional because James Conner can't run the ball to save his life, can't get separation, so on and so forth. And you got to preserve Kyler, so you can't really run a lot of read option with him. I think that this is really going to be, a referendum on Cliff Kingsbury as the season progresses. Had them backdoor. I kind of had them as a backdoor into the 7th seed of the wild card just by virtue of a weak conference. But I'm starting to wince on those words day by day. I like what I saw from the Rams. They really played it, more of a conservative game, more of a lockdown defense game. And I'm happy to see Cam Akers back healthy in the mix as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have nothing to say with that. You covered it pretty well.
And also the last matchup, we have the Panthers breaking a 9-game losing streak Winston struggles. Nola can't get out of their own way. The Panthers defeat the Saints. And I think if Winston really is as beaten up as he's been playing lately, you still have Andy Dalton available. I don't know what's going on with Taysom Hill, if he even wants to be quarterback. I just haven't seen any reports there or anything. But Dennis Allen trying to keep it together after 3 weeks with the Saints. And the Panthers really needed a win because I really think Matt Rule and his staff is not in a good place. But this week they were. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Jameis should be like get resting up. Like 4 fractures in a back isn't even like football worried. It's like life worried. Like you have to live with the rest of your life after you retire in your 30s or 40s. Like, come on, like not playing hero ball. Your team's not going anywhere anyway. Let's, no one should care about this game. I didn't care about this game. I just care about the health of Jameis Winston just because I'm a fellow human being. Rest up 2 weeks and fix your back. Come on now.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not much. It was a really volatile game. A lot of back and forth possessions. I was really, really gravely disappointed with by Baker because you finally have a home game. You have the crowd behind you, and he was just routinely missing throw after throw. No guy in the receiving core had more than 2 catches, and I think that they only won this game by virtue of, like you said, a hamstrung Winston, for lack of a better term. I think that a couple weeks off will help him preserve his body, and I do have very good faith in Dennis Allen that he can steer the ship. I think that his time to shine as a coach is here and now, and I think that this team ultimately, whether it happens this season or next, will be on the back on the right path.
Do you think Baker Mayfield's a starting quarterback next year?
No.
Jacoby Brissett would be better on this team. They have a great receiving core, great running back, a decent defense. Like it's an embarrassment that this man is playing the games he's playing. Like the fact that Sam Darnold's on IR is sad because he'd be the starting quarterback by now.
And what's crazy too is
the
thing too is I had next week they play Arizona at home in Carolina. I had the team 4-0 just by virtue of I had a little more faith in Baker coming out pissed and playing. No, well, I mean seriously, like having surgery and playing more and getting integrated with that offense, I had a little more faith that they could actually, steer the ship because they did have a hot 3-0 start with Darnold, and I thought he was an upgrade from Darnold. And they had a really good draft in the offseason. By the way, J.C. Horn had a great game as well, so I want to give him a shout out. But I'm really disappointed in this team, particularly from Baker from the top down. So, it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out.
All right, let's do this week's upsets, whimpers, and thrillers. Alex, it's your turn to start it off this week. Let's start with your upset.
Like a surprise game?
Who do you think will be upset? So yeah, it could be a surprise. Maybe it's obvious. Right. What do you say?
You guys are gonna kill me for this one. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars upsetting the Philadelphia Eagles.
Ooh, oh wow! I would like that.
Yeah, I'm going on a limb.
What do you say? Why do you think they'll be pulling this off?
I just think that a lot of these teams, especially being a 3-0 team like Philadelphia is going home. They're going to be riding high on their energy, and they're going to underestimate this team. But I think Doug Peterson coming back to Philadelphia, he's got a dirty taste in his mouth. I think he's going to be electrified as well. And I think that this team is just going to sneak up from behind and attack them. And I think that I saw a lot of promising things on the defense against the Chargers, even with a loaded roster for the Chargers. And I really have a lot more faith that they can keep this game close. And if they can get it close down to the end of the game, I think that Sirianni versus Peterson, I would give the hand to Peterson.
I agree with that. That's very good.
Excellent points. Now for me, I think you're upset. Now it's weird, but it is a 6-point spread. And I'm going to say Houston is going to beat the Chargers and get their first win. They're going to
my pick as well.
For me, I think that Houston, with the Chargers having holes on defense, holes on offense, and Houston's at home, and they still have lots to prove. I think they're going to pull it off, mess up some knockout pools, and Davis Mills will not suffer from some funny business at the end of the game like he has dealt with in the prior few weeks. Chargers are going to have a tough pill to swallow with a 1-4 record because of Houston. I would love to hear your other perspectives, Bryan.
Yeah, no, you took it away from me. I can't even pick another team for an upset because I think the rest of the games are pretty evenly matched up. So yeah, I feel like those are the only two real upsets I could see this time.
Hear that. What are we going to say for the Whimpers this week? Alex, start it off. What games are going to suck and be boring?
My turd pick for the week is the Jets at Pittsburgh. That's going to be a tough one. It's going to be quite a dual match between Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder. It's going to be great. Tune in, America.
I say the Cardinals and the Panthers with a 1-point spread. That is going to be some aggravating football to watch. You have these two former number 1 overall picks go at each other, and it's not exciting. It's not promising. I do think that the Panthers will have momentum from their win last week and create more drama in Arizona.
For me, I think the Bears versus the Giants will be the whimper of the week. I think they will be under 300 passing yards combined this game. I think it's going to be a ground and pound game between Khalil Herbert and Saquon Barkley. And yeah, I think this might be the most boring game ever.
Boring. The thriller this week is going to belong to who, Alex?
I got Buffalo going to Baltimore. I think that's going to be electrifying offensive game between the two. Who knows? By the end of the year, it could be between Josh Allen and Lamar for MVP. So we'll see.
Yeah, that was my pick as well. Buffalo is the 3-point favorites, and especially for two teams that might be able to match up defensively as well, even though you do expect them to clearly hit their overs and a lot of offense. I do think you're going to have two veteran coaches who have a lot to really show themselves. Reckon Harbaugh has a Super Bowl, but Sean McDermott's still waiting for his. I think this awesome matchup between two veteran coaches with MVP caliber quarterbacks and also some electrifying weapons is going to be very, very exciting. And we can say hallelujah to what's about to happen. And also, Yankees just officially clinched the AL East.
For my thriller, I think it's going to be Cleveland versus Atlanta. I'm going to see a high-scoring,
really
rushing attack in this game. I think Nick Chubb and Cordero Patterson will combine for over 300 yards on the rushing. I think Cordero Patterson is lightning in the bottle. And I think that Jacoby Brissett is going to really, really throw the ball around, let loose, as well as Mariota. So I expect like a 31-28 game here.
Okay. I mean, hey, it doesn't matter if you're the best teams in the leagues or the worst. The thriller's a thriller. So I like that perspective. But okay, gentlemen, another one in the books. See you next week. First one in October. We completed our first month of NFL coverage. How about that? Now let's keep it going. All right. I appreciate you, gentlemen, dearly. And don't forget to enjoy these games ahead. All right. Have a great evening, Alex and Bryan.
Have a good night, Matt. Have a good night, everyone.
Listeners at home, enjoy. See you Thursday night.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Be good.
Take care.
How does that? Sorry.